And ideally for coding, you need to have projects.
Mhm.
So I feel even as we are taking this coding to schools,
Mhm.
and let's not take it bluntly like something we just need to touch on.
Okay.
It's something that we need to grow on so that kids can see the essence of learning coding.
Welcome back to the Created Podcast. My name is Amunabi, and actually, we're talking about the digital transformation in Africa. And this specifically, we're talking about the coding in Africa in terms of secondary school and primary school. And first of all, I'm having my co host here, Mr. Kevin, who actually understand how these things work and he can give a leverage on how it works. So, Kevin, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Bruce, for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Nice to be here once more.
So basically, we have seen the introduction of coding in African schools.
Sure.
If you go to Kenya, we're speaking about the Coderies Africa. Even when you're going to the heart of Nairobi, that heart of Kenya, that is Nairobi, the first thing they'll tell you the skill sets about creativity. So because now you're a student of computer science, what are the skill sets somebody can earn from learning from these particular sites in terms of coding?
So ideally, coding gives you a couple of skills, and these are skills that we usually break down into 21st century skills. Creativity, innovation, problem solving, design thinking, algorithmic thinking. So all these skills are skills that you gain from coding, and that's why even some African governments, such as Kenya, have introduced coding in the new curriculum so that kids can gain these skills from coding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So very, very impressive. Let's talk about the implementation of it. So how will you teach it in terms of in school, in primary school? Because you understand some people who have a very low background in technology, even understanding how this computer works is a problem. How do you teach it in schools?
Yeah, I think something really key, even with having coding in the curriculum or in schools, something that's going to be really key is retooling of teachers so that they can have these skills. And retooling doesn't mean like getting them into coding at first, because they have to have basic skills in ICT, basic skills in, let's say, word processing and all that, operating a computer. Then from there on, now you can now introduce them to coding and concepts such as those. So first of all, you have to do teacher retooling so that they can get comfortable with teaching the subject. And then afterwards, now we can have modalities of how this can be taught. Let's say 1 lesson per week, 2 lessons per week, or coding clubs within schools. Yeah.
Okay, that is very impressive. Let me tackle something here. So basically, in Africa, there's a problem in terms of infrastructure.
Sure.
So basically, I'm assuming you grew up from the rural areas where I come from.
Sure.
Because now you find in the early 90s, for you to get electricity, it was very, very hard. So how do you address these challenges as somebody wants to undertake or take this particular program, whether they're having a residence in the rural areas?
So ideally, infrastructure is also key in ensuring that our people, our children, are endowed with these digital skills. And I think ideally for Kenya, we are a bit ahead because of the digital literacy program that was rolled out by the previous government, whereby they deployed about 1.2 million tablets and laptops, projectors, and all that. So I think for Kenya, we are a bit far off in terms of that. So I think the only thing remaining is that we need to look at electricity. Internet connection is a bit of a problem, but we've still made some steps ahead. And I know, because coding is already in the curriculum, we're going to push for those schools without electricity, for those schools without internet, to have internet so that they can fully effect what is in the curriculum.
I think you've said something very important. So the government also need to come in and actually.
Sure, all these is a government, because all these are public school, all these are government schools, and for government schools they are funded by government. They can't wire electricity by themselves to the schools, so they have to wait for the government to do that for them. So the government is really key. It's actually the main player in wiring electricity and connecting these schools to the internet.
Okay, that is very perfect. So let's
Sure.
speak about, first of all, in general, you went to the university. I went to the university, but it was a different bit of it. First of all, for me to learn coding, I went to university. For you to learn coding, you went to learn that is computer science at that particular university. So that was a bit long for you to wait. But now, because somebody now can have just from teenhood, that is from primary school to secondary school, is one of the key aspects that actually this platform gives that particular person. Yeah. So let's speak about the project wise, because after doing a particular, let's say, programming in Python or in Java, at the end of the course, we need to do some programming or some project. Sorry. So how did this platform reinforce this particular aspect of project?
So ideally, projects are key just to gauge what you've learned, and that's why even in other subjects you usually have exams, whereby once you've learned all the content for the year, or for the term, or for the semester, you have exams just to gauge your understanding of that. And ideally, for coding, you need to have projects. So I feel even as we are taking this coding to schools, and let's not take it bluntly like something we just need to touch on.
Okay.
It's something that we need to grow on, so that kids can see the essence of learning coding. You can teach them coding without them seeing the result, and they won't actually be interested in coding. But if you teach them coding and show them the result of what that code does using projects, that will be really key. So I think projects will be really key as coding is rolled out to schools.
So that is very impressive. This a terminology that they normally say when you're in IT school. Curiosity is one of the key aspects in learning programming.
Sure.
So basically, I think even though we haven't reached that end of project wise, so the thing is, even if we introduce the learner to this particular program, we can also induce how they can research online to find this specific kind of project to tackle. Or how do you see about that one?
I think that might be a bit difficult because these are beginners in programming, and these are young kids. Let's say you're telling a fourth grader to research on a project, and if it's a fourth grader from town areas, those kids on Saturdays go for coding clubs and stuff. But for kids in rural areas whereby, let's say, there is no electricity and they have no phones at home, no tablets, how will they research and stuff? So I think projects really have to be key, and they have to be pieced up together with the coding content, so that once you learn coding, it's easy for you to transition into creating a project. For research, I think we should reserve that for guys in tertiary education, because for them it's easier, and actually that's how you learn in tertiary, by doing research and stuff. But for kids, I think it's good we break down it to something easy for them.
Yeah, that is very impressive. So let's tackle about the roles. So basically, I'm learning coding. So what will I be in the future?
Maybe for I can't educate you on this because you're already an expert, but maybe for the audience.
Very good.
And basically, I usually say like coding is, and this is my own opinion, coding is like the basis of all technology. All these microphones that we're using connected, let's say, to a laptop. This voice is going to the laptop. It's going to be processed in some way. There's some coding in that, if you go to the lift, if you press some buttons, whatever, there's some coding in that. So I usually say coding is a background to tech, not actually a background, a backbone of tech. So anything in tech, and from tech, we're talking about development of softwares, mobile applications, websites. We're also talking about data science, databases, a lot of that, networks, that is. Yeah, so it's a wide field that we can't cover. Cybersecurity, all that, it's really a wide field that we can't cover. But that's where we are going to as a world. Right now, you can't go to a company and lack internet network. That is a network in that company. Most companies these days, if you don't have a website, you're irrelevant. If you're not online on social media, you're irrelevant, okay? And these are tools that have been created through coding. So coding is really becoming key and an in-demand skill in this digital age. Sure.
That is very good. Just word on it. You can even become a podcaster. Somebody. Yeah, it's very
Sure,
true.
sure. So that you can educate people on coding as well.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
So let's move a little bit far. So let's tackle about gender equality and opportunity. So in Africa, there's some issues about gender equality.
Sure.
So are this program really reinforcing equality among both boys and girls so that they can both equipped in learning these particular programs?
I really think guys with coding programs are really trying to do so, and I'll give a good example of Ghana.
Very good.
In Ghana, there is this program called Girls in ICT, and it's supposed to help girls like grow into tech careers and stuff. And it's not only in Ghana. If you go into other countries in Africa, that's also happening, either through the governments themselves, like Girls in ICT is through the Ministry of ICT in Ghana, or that happens either through the ministries or the governments, as I said, or through bodies, or let's say companies. Let's say Microsoft might have something for girls,
Very good.
a development, whatever for girls, and it's happening, and I'm happy it's happening, so that we can try and bridge that divide.
That is very well. I say that because I'm having 3 sisters, first of all. They're always like, no, we're not going into IT because more men actually, they're actually reluctant, but with the own particular notion of they can join, it's one of the perfect thing they can do.
Sure.
Let's talk about the group wise. So learning must be engaging, learning must be interactive. So how do we incorporate group work in terms of learning these coding programs?
So I think group work I had talked about, let's say in schools, where we usually have coding clubs.
Very good.
If you have coding clubs, you can group guys. Let's say these guys are working on robotics. These guys might be working on, let's say, websites. There's a school we went to with a colleague of mine, and that's how they had coding clubs. But within the coding clubs, they had segregated people who liked web development were on one group, people who liked mobile app development on one group, people who liked robotics were on one group, and yeah, it was actually something really good to see. And even during hackathons and stuff, because that school also had hackathons, they were also dividing the kids into groups, whereby they take, let's say, one student in grade 4, another one in grade 5, another one 6, 7, 8, let's say like 5 students from different grades, one group. The other group consists of different students, different students in different grades, but they consist one group. So these groups like battle each other and stuff, and it really helps to grow, because then the first grader might impact some knowledge to a second grader, or that grader might impact some knowledge to the fourth grader. So I think something such as coding clubs might help in group work. Sure.
That is very impressive. You've said hackathon. Yeah. So that is one of the most things that actually people learn or earn from learning coding.
Sure.
If you can challenge somebody, resolve a problem, you can become one of the perfect person. Because now, if you go to one of the core principles of Codris Africa, for example, it's about problem solving and creativity. So that's when these hackathons comes in. So let's talk about now the tools for learning. We have not tackled it yet. We just highlight how coding is it, how is it done in group wise, what are the tools somebody can use. Because now I understand in Africa, for example, now people are now using the platform like Codis Africa. They're being provided some place where they can write codes and codes and codes.
Yeah, sure. So I think in terms of the tools, we are talked about infrastructure. First of all, if you don't have infrastructure, you can't do anything.
Very good.
And we are talking about electricity, we're talking about internet, we're also talking about computers, tablets or laptops, and we're also talking about now the resource, the coding resource itself. You might need to have a curriculum on coding, and in this case, we're talking about Codris Africa. Codris Africa has a curriculum on coding. Yeah. So you also need a resource such as that, and you also need an ID or someone now to do the practicals themselves. So you might need a coding studio somewhere. You might be doing the coding as well. So those are some of the tools, and I think you also need facilitation by a teacher and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So that is very nice. So
Sure.
actually, recently the world has become disruptive in terms of the new trends in technology. Let's say the word of ChatGPT. I know recently I've been researching very well in ChatGPT.
I've tried that
You've tried
a couple of times, but
Uh-huh.
not too much.
Not too much. But actually, these I'm saying this because now there's a need now for people now to embrace these particular programs. For example, if you're learning coding, I understand that actually children are learning from their low level, but you can introduce these kind of models in a very easy way they can understand, so that they can also bridge the next future of ChatGPT or generative AI. Because now I understand you've been working this particular project. So how do you reinforce this particular aspect of incorporating latest trends in technology into learning?
Ideally, we can't run away from the fact that things are coming up day by day.
Very good.
To help in how we solve different things or trends. In this case, you talked about ChatGPT, and we can't, instead of fighting ChatGPT, I know it has some negative aspects to it, in that you're not learning, you're just copy and pasting and stuff, and then editing. But I think we can find a leeway of how, instead of fighting ChatGPT or search tools, you can find a way to use that tool to your advantage. It's like a calculator. You know, we can say, instead of you using a calculator because it's making work easier for you, you're supposed to write down, do the maths by yourself and stuff. But we accepted the use of a calculator in exams and stuff. So I think we should find new ways of working with this new technology that comes up, and draw meaning from. Sure.
And then now, one of the bit of it, in terms of metric wise, in terms of accessing now the student, because now I understand in a normal class setting, let's assume there's no coding. In a normal class setting, a teacher comes in with a mathematical test,
Sure.
gives out at the end of the month, all of us will receive the assessment marks in terms of you got an A, got an B, got a C. So what is the approach used by this particular coding platform in terms of assessing these students?
I think for me, assessment in coding, if you really do examinations, you might miss the point. You need to be hands-on.
Very good.
So that's why earlier we talked about projects. And in my view, the projects will be the examinations to gauge your understanding on whatever you've learned. So all these platforms coming up, I think it's key they have projects. We might have simple exams here and there before the final project, or simple projects before they do one big project at the end. So in coding, I think mostly we should focus on assessing these learners using projects rather than exams.
Very good.
Sure.
Very nice. So coding, it's hard, is it?
I don't know. I don't know how I can answer that, but it all depends. It might be hard if you have no interest in it.
Very good.
But if you really have interest in it, and once you get the nitty gritties of, let's say, coding, and let's say talking about languages, the concepts are usually like similar. If you move from Python, you go to Java, you'll find sequencing in both. You'll find iteration in both. So that's the deal about that. So for me, I wouldn't say coding is really hard if you have interest in it.
Very good.
Sure.
Also, to add about that in terms of interest, I think you must have an approach whereby you'll be learning every day and day, so that you can be able to understand and grasp the concept.
Sure.
Rather than just learning one time, go and sleep. The next morning, everything has evaporated.
Coding is like mathematics. You have to practice. If you learn today and then you sleep, it's over. So I think you have to keep on doing it each and every. And in tech, tech changes each and every time. The version of Python we are using right now is a bit different from the first version of Python that came out. So even if you're still learning Python, you can't learn Python right now and settle on it. And if you go to Python as well, you'll find frameworks that come up after some time. Like Django wasn't there when Python was being introduced. Flask wasn't there when Python was being introduced. So you can't just learn and then sleep. You have to keep on growing. Sure.
So there is a question about the gender equality. You have tackled it very well. So now
Sure.
I need you now to talk to these parents in terms of now they need to embrace this platform fully in a way that they should not miss a chance. What are you telling them today? Basically, the parents in Africa, in Kenya, other parts of the world.
Yeah. So for parents, I would love to say, first of all, I think don't force your kids to do coding.
Very good.
And I've said it's all about interest.
Mhm.
If you're not interested in coding,
Mhm.
it will be hectic and hard for you. So the first thing that your kid is supposed to have is show interest in IT, coding, robotics, and stuff.
Mhm.
So once you see that your kid has interest in that,
Mhm.
try and nurture his or her her hobbies or talents.
Mhm.
Let's say in coding, you can start them off with coding clubs. You can start them off with all these coding platforms that we have coming up right now. Yeah, so from interest, let it stem from interest.
Okay.
Don't let it stem from, kitambo.
Mhm.
We were told by our parents, I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be a pilot. So you're becoming what you are,
By the
what your
way,
parent wants you to be. But these days, just let them be. Okay, if they show interest in music, let them be musicians.
that is very, very nice. You talk about something about forcing somebody to do something. So they might be in a medical school. At the end of the day, they're being frustrated. Why am I
Sure,
doing this?
sure.
I think it's just an interest, and it's one of the key aspects also in preaching this particular thing. And actually, learning coding is about gaining the skill, earning the skill, and actually creating project and actually becoming one of the best person in the world, in the likes of Elon Musk, the Bill Gates, the Pete and Deg of Safaricom. And lastly, to you, thank you